my boyfriend trying to be supportive. The girl texts, my shawarma fell apart. And the boyfriend texts back, oh no, are you solution oriented about it or in the feelings stage? There's no emojis, there's no punctuation in this at all. I just was like,
Bravo. Bravo.
major kudos to that boyfriend.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 40 of Lead to Gold. Oh my gosh, crazy. Episode 40? Like, hello? How did we get here? I don't know, but I am beyond excited to be bringing this episode to you all. We have another guest who's come on today, and her name is Chelsea Horton. Oh my goodness, you guys. I cannot even tell you how excited I was to have her on the show. She was one of the first people that I followed from the Lead to Gold Instagram account way back in 2021, before the blog was even live, before anything was live. I made my Instagram, and this was one of the first accounts that I followed. So I want to give you a little bit more context to that before we dive straight in. But Chelsea created Healing Embodied, and it is the most incredible, multifaceted, like therapy service, but it's so much more than that. They focus specifically at Healing Embodied on relationship anxiety and working through where that comes from. And that is really the core of our conversation today. So, like I said, Chelsea is the CEO and founder of Healing Embodied. She is a relationship anxiety specialist. She is a body/mind integration expert with a master's in dance or movement therapy and counseling. She's a board certified dance therapist who has facilitated hundreds of sessions with those experiencing intense anxiety, relationship anxiety, but other types as well. And she has lived this reality herself. So this is something that is not only what she does for others, but she has lived through it. This is also her embodiment of her own healing, which I think is just so incredible. I will let her get into the nitty-gritty on all that she does, but just before we get into the episode, I would love to give the usual spiel that I give at the beginning of every episode, which is just to say that if you have listened to Lead to Gold before, if you get through this episode and you like it, there are so many ways that you can show that support. The first would be to rate and review the episode, the podcast itself, wherever you're listening. And I always forget to say this one, but this is a huge one. Please share with a friend. If you know of anybody who might find this conversation helpful, if you've perused a couple others in the past and you're like, oh, I like this, I want to send this to a friend, that would be so fun and nice. And I'm sure your friend would appreciate it. I know I would appreciate it. Otherwise, I mentioned I'm on Instagram over at Lead to Gold. You could follow me there. And the last thing I'll say for now is that if you like what we do here on the podcast, if you've maybe been listening for a while, been following for a while, and you're like, ooh, I could use even more. Well, guess what? There is more. I also run a blog under the same name, Lead to Gold. And every other Monday, I post new blog posts. They all relate to some similar topics that we talk about here on the podcast. So if you are just wanting a little bit more in the form of writing, you can go check out leadtogold.com. All the links for that are in the show notes. And this is really the last thing I'll say. I just recently added a community center page to my blog, which means that if you subscribe, you can also write your own stuff on Lead to Gold, which is really, really cool. It all shows up on the community center page. It's all moderated, so all I have to do is just give it a quick approve. And that's just to avoid any craziness going on in there. But it is something I'm really excited about. Community care and community in general is such a important pillar of the work that I do with Lead to Gold. So it seemed very appropriate and very well time to have a place for other voices aside from my own, which, just to bring it all back, is why I am so excited to have yet another incredible guest on the pod today. So I really hope you enjoy this one. Thank you so much for being here. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I hope you get something great out of this episode. Let's dive right in. I'll chat with you soon. Bye.
We did it.
Hi. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited.
How are you feeling? You feeling better?
So much better. How about you?
Same. I
Good.
had also completely lost my voice last week, and I was going to email you.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to be sounding like this on the podcast.
It was so bad. I never get sick, but it was like a 2-week thing, and which has not happened to me in I don't know how long. So-
Yeah, I have been sick in over a year, and it wasn't COVID, so I was like, I don't know what this is, but
Yes, it's something.
wrote it
Something.
out.
We're good. I'm glad you're here. I'm so happy we're doing this. I have been the biggest fan of your work for quite some time, and I'm just like, I always feel kind of weird because I'm like, I know we haven't met, but just know I'm a huge fan. So
Appreciate that. That means a lot.
yeah. If you would like, do you want to just start by kind of introducing yourself and your business and what you do?
Sure thing. Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm Kelsey Horton. I'm the founder and CEO of Healing Embodied. I started Healing Embodied in 2019, and from then up until now, I've helped people who experience anxiety in their loving, healthy relationships and help them feel more confident and trusting. We use embodiment, somatic work, and emotional processing to help people feel safe in their bodies. This is ultimately what helped me feel safe in my relationship. And this last year, we created our own practitioner training program. So we have an international accredited certification program. It's a year long, and now we train other people how to help their clients through somatic work and embodiment and trauma work, all the good stuff.
That's really awesome. I actually didn't even know that. Super cool. If you have a definition, I feel like there's 2 buzzwords that are in there that some people may not be familiar with. So what would you describe is embodiment and what is somatic work?
I would say they could be interchangeable in some ways. When we think of somatic, it's the body. So that's just kind of the general term for work that involves using and working with your body.
Mm-hmm.
Embodiment also falls under that, but for me, I think embodiment can go a step further. In our world at Healing Embodied, we see embodiment also as a bridge to creativity. Mm-hmm. So we're using the body and working with what we're feeling in the body, and also bringing in expression, creative expression. Yeah. So we're taking the awareness of what we're feeling in the body, what we're feeling somatically, and then we can channel that through creative expression.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction, because I always hear about somatics, and I think a lot of people have different definitions for it, but I like that distinction. I'm curious why this work started for you. Like, if you could think back to yourself like 10 years ago, maybe when this was starting to become like something that you were aware of, that maybe I should do something with this. I'm just curious what life was like for you, before this began. Like, what were your relationships like? Why did this feel like something that needed to be born into the world?
Yeah, actually 10 years ago, this year I'll be celebrating my 10-year anniversary with my husband, Matt.
Congrats!
So 10 years ago, almost, I met this guy who I could sense that there was something worthwhile there. There was something I wanted to explore and lean into and let myself just see where it went. But my brain was like, nah, dog. My mind came up with every possible reason and worst case scenario and this kind of obsessiveness about, is this the right person? What if there's someone better? Don't make a mistake. Like, you need to be sure. And so it was really hard to like navigate a new relationship when my mind was constantly trying to sabotage it. And at this time, I was also just starting grad school to become a dance movement therapist and counselor. So I had a little over 10 years ago, I graduated with my bachelor's in counseling.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, what do I want to do next? I can't see myself being like a traditional talk therapist. Being a theater kid and a dancer, I was like, how can I fuse all the things that I love? And that's when I found out about dance therapy. So I was starting grad school, learning how to be in my body, learning how to process emotions through my body, learning how to, use creative expression to connect with my emotions. And simultaneously, I was going through the literal worst anxiety of my life. Just debilitating on some days. And so 10 years ago at the time, I didn't know that this was my training ground for the work that I would be doing today.
Yeah, I can relate to that like 100%. I've been in a long-term relationship also, and it's really interesting. I'm sure it manifests in different ways for different people, but our stories are very similar. Like, it was my college years that I was just like, I don't know about this. It's like every possible thing that you can think of that might be wrong. It's like you almost convince yourself that like, but that could be it,
Yes.
And I'm just curious, were you guys long distance? Like, did that aid in the difficulty of it?
So we dated for about 5 months before we did long distance for 2 years. When we met in Florida, which is where I was born and raised, and he got a job in Los Angeles, and I got accepted into grad school in Chicago. And I was like, there's no way. Like, I thought that was goodbye. And I was also like, well, I need to be focusing on myself anyway. I can't have a boy distracting me.
So real. So real.
But we just kept talking. And I guess we're like, I guess we're doing long distance, and we'll just like see where it goes and how it unfolds. And for me, and this is not the case for most of the people I talk with, for me, in a way, long distance made it easier because my avoidant parts really loved it.
Okay. We can definitely talk about that.
My avoidant part was like, I literally don't have to see you. I'm not only am I keeping you at arm's length, I'm keeping you on the other side of the country.
Yeah.
There's the pressure or the commitment to like move in together wasn't there because like, well, I'm in grad school. So like, this is my life right now. This is my main focus. And so in a way, for me, the distance in some ways was I wouldn't say helpful, but my avoidant parts liked it. But the thing that was the most difficult was when we would visit each other. Because if my anxiety spiked when we were visiting each other, we're staying with each other. So like, I can't leave. He can't. Right. And that definitely happened multiple times on visits where my anxiety was like, ah! And I was like, oh crap. Like, I'm literally
like,
stuck
oh God. Right. And then that thought comes back of like, something is wrong here. Something is wrong with this relationship. But how did you, I guess, personally work through that? How were you able to be like, no, I trust some part of this.
Yeah.
And I know that this is going to be okay. Because obviously it worked out.
Yeah. I mean, it was not a linear process.
Right.
Much imagine. But at first, just in doing my own somatic work and embodiment work, I began to have a visceral discernment, a knowing in my body of what my anxiety felt like and what it sounded like. Because before they were conflated. It's like that age-old question, is it me or is it my anxiety? Before I couldn't discern, because anxiety is so damn convincing. And when you're only paying attention to your mind, all you're hearing is your thoughts. And anxiety's got lots of thoughts to dish out. And so you're just kind of confused with all these different thoughts. But once I began to connect with my body and be able to identify what was happening on a visceral level, I was like, wait, this is what fear feels like. And this is what me feeling grounded and connected and at peace and at home in myself feels like. I began to like cultivate more of that discernment.
Yeah.
So that even though anxiety might come up with a new hook or a more convincing reason, I was able to identify in my body, this feels like anxiety. And I have felt the grounded, connected space inside of me before.
Yeah.
And I've experienced time and time again in this relationship that it is safe, that this person is worth the risk that anxiety was so worried about me taking.
Yeah.
Like through the consistency and him showing up for me and me continuing to show up despite how scared I was, through that process, it was like I was able to have evidence and proof in my body, like, this is okay. This is okay. This is okay. This is okay. And slowly the voice of fear becomes less dominant.
That totally makes sense. It's like a muscle memory kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super amazing that you were able to like live through that. And then now you sort of teach that to others. I mean, that's incredible. That's like the ultimate goal, I feel.
Yeah. And at the time, this was in 2014, 2015, there were no Instagram accounts. There was no buzzwords about relationship anxiety. So I honestly had no idea what I was experiencing. I had no idea.
Right.
And even though I'm in grad school, I'm learning about OCD, but you kind of get this general overview of like OCD and anxiety. You don't learn the specific subtypes or, you know, how each one, the many ways that each one can manifest. So you typically think, oh, OCD is locking the door 3 times or, you know, washing your hands 7 times or being afraid of dropping a knife or something. I had no idea that that's what I was experiencing at the time. So that made it even more convincing that it was quote unquote real.
Yes. That was my exact experience too. Like,
yeah.
And when you find out, I don't know how I really revealed it to myself, but it's like when you find out what OCD can look like, and it's not just this textbook definition of like orderliness and cleanliness and whatever. It's like, I mean, it completely changed my life, because only when you realize that that's it, are you like, oh, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
Like it's actually
you're like, wow, this makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious too, with the work that you do now and helping other people with this, is OCD a really common thing that people are experiencing that also aids in relationship anxiety? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So there's a lot of overlap in a good handful of our clients. You know, clients not only experience this kind of anxiety and obsessive thinking and fear in their romantic relationships, but they also experience other themes. You know, pedophilia OCD and harm OCD and sexual orientation OCD. So I've worked with people on the whole kit and caboodle, the whole gamut, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if we take a second to just kind of like step back and look at your work as a whole, like what is it that you do in Healing Embodied? Like what does a typical, I don't want to say client session, but a typical work session, what does that look like?
It's so different each time because it's really about what's coming up and what's alive in that
Mhm.
moment, client. But ultimately, our work goes so far beyond relationship anxiety. It's about being in relationship with all aspects of yourself, being in relationship with your emotions. The reason why we have relationship anxiety is, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, but oftentimes it's because we're afraid of feeling disappointment or grief, or we believe that if we pick the wrong partner that we're a failure and therefore we will be unlovable. So there's these deeper things going on here.
Yeah.
And through this work, we're helping people in the relationship with themselves and with their emotions to learn how to process these emotions in and through their bodies. So while relationship anxiety is often the doorway that people walk through to get to this work, what they often find is that it's the work of all things. It's the work of how do I be in relationship with my human experience and the complexity of that and the uncertainty of that and the discomfort of that and the joy of that and the beauty of that. And how do I begin to see my body as an ally and my greatest supporter in my human experience and feeling confident that I can be with any and all emotions that I experience in my human body.
Yeah. It's so crazy to me. And this is part of the work that I also had to do, which, by the way, had I known about your all's work 5, 6, 7 years ago, things would have probably happened a lot sooner. But I was very much like you. I'm like, I felt like I didn't have an outlet to really get this information. And I feel like a lot of people don't because it's not popularized. I don't know if that's exactly the word I want to use. But when you work with somebody and they kind of start to realize, oh, maybe this isn't really an issue with me and my partner, does that change the course of their healing process?
100%. There's this moment in their body where they go, oh, I see it now. I see now that when I'm obsessing about if my partner is right for me, it's actually this really scared, tender, vulnerable part of me that is so afraid of getting hurt. And now I know that when those obsessions come up, I need to tend to that part and hold my body and let that fear energy move through me and honor the sadness that might be there and like work directly with the part or the emotion that's driving the obsession versus playing obsession whack-a-mole.
Right. Oh my gosh. The way you just said that really like struck a chord because it's that you just said it, inner realization of like, oh, this isn't really about that person or this outward fear. It's really something deep within me. And that's like, I feel like, and if anybody's listening and they get freaked out by that, that's part of the healing, right? It takes a long time.
What I hear almost with every person is they're so afraid to turn inward because they believe if I turn inward, my body is going to tell me something absolutely awful.
Mm-hmm.
That the thing I don't want to be true is going to be true.
Mm-hmm.
That my body is going to confirm the worst things about me. And that's because when you're so used to listening to your mind and the judgmental, critical, shaming, fear-based voice, you assume that your body's going to sound the same.
Yes. Oh
And
my gosh.
just couldn't be further from the truth. The voice of your body is gentle and kind, and it's not even really a voice. The body speaks in sensation and in feeling and in emotion. And so when you turn in towards your body, I don't like to give people certainty, but I can guarantee you, you're not going to find this horrible, scary, awful thing about yourself that that you're gonna have to be forced to do something, and your body's gonna go, if you don't do this, you're a coward, and blah, 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 blah. Like
Right.
Everyone is so afraid of that.
Yeah, that's your anxiety talking.
Yes.
Yeah. I've always heard the phrase, well, not always. I could have used this many years ago, as I've been saying, but when I finally heard the phrase, like, anxiety shouts, but intuition like whispers.
Mhm.
Or intuition, it maybe doesn't even say anything. It's like you said, it's more of a feeling or a knowing, but anxiety is what is yelling at you. Intuition doesn't yell at you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, and that changes everything.
Yeah. Intuition is more like a, I wonder.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that could be really good for me.
Yeah.
Or, I wonder. Versus, if you don't do this right now, everything's going to be horrible.
And I feel like so many of us spend so many years of our life just like following that
Yeah.
because it's all we know. And I've probably asked several guests this, but I love asking different people this question because I feel like there's many great ways to get to this. But when you live so long kind of driven by fear and by the anxious voice in your head, how do you learn to tap into intuition instead? How do you learn to trust that?
Yeah, couple things. First of all, getting really clear and familiar with what anxiety actually sounds like,
Mm-hmm.
instead of confusing it with your own, capital S self in IFS terms, internal family system. Getting really clear. So maybe you start to write down the themes you notice that anxiety is always focused on me making a mistake. Anxiety is always focused on me getting hurt. Anxiety is always focused on what people think of me, right? Like no matter what specific context or content that anxiety throws at you, there's underlying themes. So get really familiar with the types of themes and things that anxiety is so hyper focused on. Highlight themes like urgency, all or nothing, black or white thinking, this or that, catastrophizing, right? And get really clear what anxiety feels like in your body. Okay, it feels like this hot, like dense rock in my chest, whatever. Just get really clear on what that experience is like. And then when I think about the easiest way to access intuition, it's like when you're in, what's often called the flow state.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing something that you're so immersed in the present moment that you're out of your head. So maybe it's doing something you love, creating something, doing art, being outside, riding your bike. I don't know, like whatever puts you in that flow state where you're so deeply present that you're not even consumed with what's happening in your head because you're so immersed in what you're experiencing in the present moment. I feel like that is a really powerful and easy inroad to start to discern what does intuition feel like, because intuition is also deeply rooted in presence. Mm-hmm. It's not concerned about past or future. It's not concerned about, you have to do this now or else. Like intuition is not waiting to spank you and punish you for like not following it, right?
Yeah, not spanking in a fun way either. Side note.
Yeah, get familiar with the feeling that you get when you go like, I just feel like myself.
Yeah.
I feel like myself.
Mm-hmm. It's something that a lot of us maybe do experience, but we just aren't aware that we're experiencing it.
We're not always aware when it's creeping up. And so it's getting really clear and aware and bringing the unconscious into the consciousness.
Totally.
Bringing what's usually happening kind of under the surface on autopilot into your conscious awareness.
Right. And this is something that I feel like I'm going to maybe take a side note here, but something that I would love your input on, because I have certain thoughts about most people's relationship to social media and how that also affects not only their anxiety in general, but also just like their relationship expectations. The eye roll. I love it. I feel like it's something I wanted to just see how you see that manifesting in your clients or in stories that you've heard. Like, how does that show up?
Well, you've opened a can of worms.
Let's go.
Because this is one of the biggest things that my clients battle with, and something that was a huge barrier for me is, we're constantly bombarded with relationship advice, relationship perspectives, experiences that are not universal, and yet they're presented as if they are universal. They're presented
Snaps for that.
They're presented as if they're prescriptive, as if they're one size fits all. They do not take into account the complexity and the nuance of the human experience and how people have different experiences. And so we see someone on TikTok being like, if you have any doubt, you need to leave right away.
Yeah.
And then we go, oh crap. Oh no, like I have doubt. Obviously, this person on TikTok knows the ins and outs of my inner world and is saying something that is more true for me than anything that I could uncover for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that also comes from a place of just like, and it's not even a bad thing, just not being familiar with doing that inner work. Yeah. Nobody's fault, but it's like if you are a young person, I don't know, an 11-year-old, even on TikTok, which is very common. I'm a high school English teacher, so like I see these young people on all these crazy sides of the internet. Yeah, and they're getting fed this stuff all the time, and they haven't even had a moment to consider their own reality and like their own situation, which is really harmful. And I feel like we are just not talking about this.
Yes. And what happens is we either make ourselves wrong. Oh, my experience is wrong, and therefore I need to change what I'm doing or who I am or how I feel based on what this person on TikTok just said. Or we make the other person wrong. Well, that's just not true. And so like it's very polarizing versus understanding and holding space for the vastness of human experiences and going, oh, okay, that's their experience. I can see a context in which that would be true and applicable. That's not my experience, and that's okay. And I'm allowed to do something different without making them the bad guy.
Right. Oh my God. This is just lesson number 1 on internet etiquette that I just feel like nobody has really gotten to yet, but hopefully in time.
It takes a level of emotional maturity to hold the discomfort of that kind of opposing things being true at the same time. Like for some people, yes, if you're doubting a relationship, sure. Maybe it's time to look at whether you should stay or not. I don't know. And for other people, no, that doesn't mean you need to leave, right? The two opposing realities simultaneously true, depending on the context in which that's coming from.
Right. And there's so many nuances that could go into play on any of these blanket statements, which I thought might be a little bit fun if I gave you a few and we could like pick them apart.
Oh my God, I'm upset.
I cannot remember. I know months ago you posted something. I'm not going to remember what it said, but it was something about like, if the love of your life was like waiting right around the corner, would you leave your current person? Yes. I forget how it was phrased. Like your ideal person, your perfect person.
Yeah. I have to give the credit to Sarah on that one.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
One of her clients sent her a TikTok that said, if you knew the perfect relationship was around the corner, would you stay in your current relationship? And Sarah went off and it was beautiful.
Let's talk about 100 reasons why that is problematic, but
yeah.
Okay. So my first one, and this one might be iffy, and I really was curious what your thoughts are on this or how this conversation might come up for your clients. But a cliche that I see a lot is that you have to love yourself before you can love someone else. What are your thoughts on that? Because I see where that could be true, of course, but like
it can be true, and we learn to love ourselves through our attachment figures. So we actually learn to love ourselves by being loved by others first.
Okay, tell me more.
If our parents did not meet us with love and kindness and compassion with certain aspects of ourselves, or they were really critical or put a lot of pressure on us, we internalize that and we learn to relate to ourselves in that way. We become very critical of ourselves. We become very judgmental of ourselves. We have a low view of ourselves or certain aspects of ourselves, or we put a lot of pressure. And so through what has been modeled to us via relationship, we learn how to relate to ourselves. And that in turn impacts how we relate to other people.
Right.
So it's a both and.
Mm.
It's a both and. It's also not a destination. Like, I'll only be worthy of relationship when I've learned to love myself as if it's a completed thing. We
Yeah.
can be learning to love ourselves better and better as someone mirrors back to us our own worthiness and sees us and shines a light on how lovable we are. And it makes the process of loving ourselves much easier in some ways when someone is reflecting back what they love about us and they're modeling love. And then we learn to love ourselves better, and therefore we love better.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. Thank you for saying that. That just like really got me. I love that. I was waiting for something along the lines of like, I mean, learning to love yourself is such a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
And depending on how long you are immersed in examples of that being much more difficult or made much more difficult by the people around you, like, oh my God, that's a lifelong thing to branch out of and unlearn certain parts of. So true. Okay, are you ready for the next one?
Yeah.
This was an interesting one. If they wanted to blank, they would.
Mm.
Another eye roll, which I love.
Uh-huh. I can see where this might be applicable, right? Like, if they wanted to respect you, they would. If they wanted to be faithful, they would. It has nothing to do with you. You don't need to be better. You don't need to chase. You don't need to prove. You shouldn't have to prove in order to gain someone's respect and loyalty, right? So in that context, sure.
Yeah.
But I think the way that a lot of people take it is, I shouldn't have to communicate what I want from my partner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they should just read my mind. And if they really wanted to do this thing for me, they would. I wouldn't even have to say it.
Right. If he wanted to buy me flowers, he would. If he wanted to text me back as soon as I texted, he would. Like, that's where I see this a lot.
And instead of having these hidden, unspoken expectations of what you think they should be doing and when, and then becoming resentful and, you know, making it evidence as how, you know, that they're falling short as a partner versus I'm an adult and I'm going to take responsibility for the things that I want in my life. And if I would like those things from another person, I'm going to communicate those things. I love it when people buy me flowers. And it would mean so much to me if you surprised me sometimes with them. Meow. How sexy is that?
Oh my God. Like, say less.
Right?
Say less. But I also want to ask, because I'm sure you run into this a lot. Why is that so hard for so many of us?
I think a lot of us have not, again, learned proper communications. It hasn't been modeled to us. I know for me, there was a lot of passive aggressiveness and avoidance modeled growing up and then exploding. And so first, we're not modeled healthy communication or being able to express your needs clearly. Or when we did express our needs, they were poo-pooed on or brushed to the side. And so then we learn, well, okay, it's not even safe to voice my needs. So if I have a need, I can't voice it, but I still want it to be met. So I'm silently hoping or dropping subtle hints or kind of doing this manipulative side dance to try to get those needs met because voicing them directly is not safe.
I feel like that is so, I don't want to say universal, but so common. Just that we're not even aware of that. Because that's definitely something that I've run into where I'm like, you know, it's like, it wouldn't be that hard for me to just ask or to vouch for myself. But why can't I? Like, why does that feel so hard?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really see that.
a workshop called Just Say It a couple months ago about this very thing because it's something I'm still growing in and strengthening because I notice that I will pose a need in the form of a question. This happened a couple weeks ago. Me and Matt were laying in bed and I go, "Do you want to cuddle?" And he goes, "Is that what you want?" And I was like, "I would like to cuddle." Like, try again. I would like to cuddle. Will you cuddle me?
Yes. Yes. I love that so much. Okay. Next one. Never go to bed angry. Thoughts on that?
First, that was like taken out of context from the Bible,
Ooh.
which it says, "It never let the sun set on your anger."
Okay. Yes. I've heard that.
And who knows if that's the proper English translation, I got a lot to say about that too. So, okay, I can see how in some contexts it might, again, I think this is more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more of a saying versus a rule. Like, never go to bed angry, meaning don't let things stew in resentment. If you can, clearly communicate what's going on instead of just pouting about it. But then there are some days where you're like, I'm not going, like we've already talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
And if we keep going, because I feel like I'm not supposed to end this and still feel angry, we're gonna just scratch each other raw.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes we need to just go to sleep.
Yeah.
Like,
Laugh.
and
Think about it.
start fresh from a fresh perspective the next day. Come back to it more regulated and less exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am not my best self when I am exhausted and emotional.
Oh my God. So real.
My conflict resolution skills, not great.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's better to go to bed even when you're feeling a little angry and revisit it the next day.
Yeah. Have some sleep for, a little bit of time. Wake up, have some food. That's probably another part of it too. That like if we're arguing at like
Get a
10
snack.
p.m.
Yeah.
Come on. What do you think's gonna happen here?
I am not a pleasant person when I'm hangry.
No.
A little gremlin comes out and it's
Yeah.
not a self. So
It's a recipe for disaster. Okay. My personal favorite. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about this. When you know, you know.
mm-hmm. Okay, let's go. So when people say when you know, a lot of people assume that they somehow teleported into the future, time traveled into the future, and saw I'm still with this person and we are still happy. So I know I have certainty.
Mm-hmm.
I have certainty. And because I had this special magical feeling of certainty, which certainty is not an emotion, by the way, when we have this special perceived feeling of certainty, then it's all going to work out. When people say, when you know, they're really saying, when they say, I just knew, they're really saying, I have confidence in my decision and I trust. Now, how many people do we know have said, I just knew, and then 3 months later, that person is not showing up on their Instagram feed anymore?
Oop. Yeah.
So it's really this experience of I feel confident in my decision. I feel unwavering in it. I maybe have enough evidence to feel confident in it. But most people, when they say that, they don't have enough actual evidence of being with that person and seeing their character over time.
Right.
It's this feeling, which is often they're just confusing infatuation with certainty, this belief that they're certain, which you're not. You are not. No one is certain. No one is certain that they're going to be with their person till their last breath.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like I see the good intention behind it, like what we've talked about with a lot of these. To me, and this is kind of like best case thinking, I'm happy for people when they say that. Of course. And to me, it sounds like, okay, you have a pretty healthy handle on your intuition around this person. Like this person feels good to you, and that's amazing. Like that is absolutely something to celebrate. However, the issue that I take with it is like, don't prescribe that to people with anxiety and or OCD who have trouble with knowing things for certain. You know what I mean?
Right. Who have trouble trusting themselves and trusting in their decisions.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. What a wonderful, beautiful thing it is to feel really clear in your decision making, in what feels good for you, and people who feel safe for you, and being able to be congruent in that. This person feels safe for me. They have all the green flags that I think are important. I feel really confident. And I'm all in. That's really what they're saying.
Yeah. And that's wonderful. I don't want anybody to get that twisted. Like
Yeah.
that is so great.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's not the only indicator that something is worth moving toward.
Yes. Fully agree. And I feel like all of these phrases are they're just in a list of many relationship cliches that we see every single day. And I really wanted to ask just about your thoughts on those because I could see how that gets into so many people's minds and causes way more doubt than is necessary for a relationship that is probably totally fine.
Yeah.
But we've created such a list of expectations that just kind of don't exist, you know?
There are these
At least not for everyone.
neat little boxes of like, oh, you know, and if you wanted to, there are these neat little boxes that we think that our messy, complex human experience need to fit into in order to be valid.
Mm-hmm. And social media is so good at making these things all look like super clean cut and universal. And there's really no room for nuance out there in the wild west of the internet.
The algorithm punishes nuance. The algorithm pushes polarizing black or white statements that get a lot of engagement.
So true. So true. And that's a whole other like conversation that I just have on the regular. It's like, rage bait. Yes. It's really good to be able to start understanding that that's what you're seeing. But I just really feel for people like what I was talking about earlier, like, you know, young people who haven't really had a chance to do the inner work or haven't really grown up in any other environment other than the internet where they're seeing these universal truths. And I'm quoting, that has to be so confusing.
Yeah.
So confusing. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm curious too, like if, you know, we're talking a lot about some of the downsides to the social media and like the larger scale relationship issues that we've seen. But I'm curious, like, since you've been doing this work, what are some positive changes that you've seen? Maybe not just on social media, but in general, like, what are you seeing becoming more popular or more people are practicing that gives you hope?
Yeah, well, first of all, like as much as I poo-poo on social media and I have a very complicated relationship with it, it is a great place to find other people who are experiencing what you thought you were the only, like you thought you're the only one experiencing it, and then you see someone talking about this thing that you have felt so isolated in and felt so ashamed of, and then you're like, there's this moment of relief as you have the awareness that there's other people who are dealing with this or something similar.
Yeah.
And this sense of community or connection, it only goes to a degree, right? Because parasocial relationships and two-dimensional relationships. But anyway, and I think, I am seeing more people talk about anxiety and how that impacts things. I am, things like somatics and embodiment are becoming buzzwords for better or for worse. For better in making it more mainstream that this is a viable approach to therapy. Like,
Yeah.
the body, it needs to be talked about, and I'm really glad that it is being talked about. The downside is that, again, people who don't actually know what it is are just kind of creating these like prescriptive, non-nuanced pieces of advice about how to work with your body.
Right.
So, there are wonderful things happening when it comes to spreading awareness and creating community and decreasing isolation.
Yeah, so true. And like we've been talking about that sort of patterning throughout this conversation, but that's exactly how I realized that what I was experiencing was OCD. I think it was through Reddit, which, Reddit is 95% of the time a cesspool, but then, that was the life-changing moment where I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not crazy. I'm not bad. I'm not a monster. Other people experience this. And similarly with finding your page, Healing Embodied, I was like, oh, people are actually working on this and talking about this. And that's so huge.
Yes.
So I know
Yeah.
I've already made it abundantly clear, but thank you for what you do because it is huge.
That means so much. I'll be honest, in this new age of the algorithm being absolute trash and feeling like our stuff is no longer seen, it's really beautiful to hear that it is being seen
Mm-hmm.
and it is having an impact, even if it's not having the metrics that we're used to looking for in order to know that it's been seen. So
Yeah,
thank you for saying that.
you're so welcome. And I just know I'm there with you too. My Instagram is very small but mighty. And I just, it's one of those things I think we're gonna like creators have to almost change their narrative around it because yeah, you might get lucky. You might get a lot of insane engagement like in a really short amount of time, but it's still really like the wild, wild west out there. And we just like don't know where any of this is going.
Reach.
But I think I love trying to keep that main framework of like, as long as people who need to see this are seeing it, then that's at the end of the day, I think what matters. But yeah, I love your stuff. Thanks for being the person that you are. Thanks for doing what you do. I would love to finish this out just thinking back to like Chelsea of 10 years ago. And what would she think of your life now if she could see it?
I think there would be one part of her who would be a little bit mortified. Because she was very much still in like good girl programming.
Mm.
And the thought of kind of going against everything that she's been told she should do was still absolutely terrifying for her. So I think there would be one part of her that would be like, ah! And then there would be another part of her who would feel this weight of relief, this sense of relief and joy and pride in seeing how it all turned out, even though I felt so afraid.
Yeah.
And being like, oh man, I turned into a badass.
Girl, go you. That's awesome. I think about this a lot and I'm just like, yeah, I'm so with you on that. I'm just like, I'd be like low-key afraid of me today, but also go you.
Hell yeah.
Look at you out there.
Dang.
That's so awesome. I love it. What would you tell her if you could tell her something?
Girl, chill. just let yourself experience your life as it's unfolding. You do not need to be 20 steps ahead of everything at all times.
Mm.
Just trust in the goodness of life as it's unfolding. Like everything is here for your evolution and your growth, so you can't fuck it up. So stop trying to like make sure you don't.
Mm. That's some medicine. I love that. I love that.
But put my hands on her shoulders and look her in the eyes and be like, girl, take a breath.
Calm down. I love it. Oh, okay. I don't know if you have listened to any Led to Gold before, but I always end the show with a little card pull from We're Not Really Strangers. Have you ever heard of this game?
No.
Okay, it's a really awesome game. It is I think it was created in 2020, but it's the original version of it is a card game that you play with strangers or like your friends or your partner, but they're very connective and like vulnerable questions. Nothing that would make you necessarily uncomfortable, but they're like they get deep. And then there's
Yeah.
expansion packs. So at the end of every episode, whether I have a guest or it's just me, I pull a card from the healing expansion pack. And I just thought we could talk about it together.
How fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's super fun. I like this one. I don't know if I've had this one before. What does prioritizing your mental health look like in this chapter of your life? Get specific.
How did you know this is actually something I'm recently working on?
Ooh, I love when they're relevant.
So lately for me, right, I'm a business owner, and I've created a lot of privilege for myself in being able to set my own schedule and not having to work a demanding, typical work schedule.
Mhm.
And so for a long time, I kind of just used that as a way to minimize what the fact that I actually needed and wanted more in order to really support myself mentally and emotionally. And so recently, like I would, working from home and for myself, a lot of my days still look like sitting at my desk, working at stuff, doing sessions, podcast interviews. And
Mhm.
even though I was working way less hours than the average full-time worker, being a business owner, it's like I'm always carrying it with me in my consciousness.
Mhm.
And
That makes sense.
it was like there was this siphoning of my energy from this thing that I love, but ultimately I had to go, okay, how can I nourish myself even more extraordinarily?
I love that.
Beyond just not taking on too many clients, not working too many hours. Like, yes, for me, that's the baseline of me functioning optimally and not getting burnt out and feeling really fulfilled. And so for me, it's looked like, okay, I have this membership to this spa and resort. It means actually going to it and like sitting in the hot tub or the steam room. It means me like going outside. It means me taking my laptop to the library down the street and just changing up my work environment.
Yeah.
Like really getting creative with how I nourish myself. And being really unapologetic about how much rest and recuperation I need in order to do the work that I do, instead of kind of wearing this badge of honor of like, this is my passion, my work. I bring it everywhere with me.
Girl bossing.
I'm girl bossing. No rest.
No,
No.
it's so important. And like I love that we're starting to see more people push back on that because especially with the work you do, I imagine it can be quite heavy. And like the rest is a pinnacle, critical part of the work.
Yeah. And I
You know?
realized it's more than just rest, it's recuperative thing, like recuperate. So like doing things that nourish me and fill me up and taking care of myself extraordinarily versus just, okay, getting the sleep that I need, which I always do. I get great sleep. My sleep hygiene is excellent. Not working too many hours. Okay, I'm not working 8 hours a day straight anymore like I used to when I worked at the psych hospital. Okay, not taking on too many clients. Okay, I have 3 clients total right now, one-on-one for myself. So it's like, okay, I'm doing all those things. Why do I still feel so burnt out and exhausted, like to the point of crying?
Mhm.
So like, and to the point of it impacting my relationship with my husband, because I have nothing left to give at the end of the day.
Right.
And it's like, what the heck? I'm cutting my hours. I'm sleeping. What gives? And it's like, okay, it's more than, for me at this stage in my life where I'm at and the privilege that I have to even be able to consider this, what else do I need to actually nourish myself and fill my cup?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love also, just as a side note, the change in environment piece that you mentioned is like so small but so revolutionary in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely. Love that.
Gets my creative juices flowing, gets me in a
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. I almost think of it as like I'm more inclined to be productive. I don't
Yes.
even really like using that word, but it's just like, it's almost like romanticizing your life a little bit, especially with like the going to the library, going to the coffee shop. It's just like, I'm just going to do my work. I'm going to do my little thing out here in a public place.
And I
love
can
that.
walk to the library, and the library is across from this little lake. And so I just feel so wholesome and adorable. I got a
Yeah.
backpack on my laptop. I'm walking by the lake to the library. It takes 7 minutes to walk to the library. I'm sitting in the library. That's wholesome as fuck.
I
Like,
love it.
it just was another level of happiness that I did not know. I've lived here for 3.5 years, 7-minute walk to the library this whole time. And I
Mm.
only did it for the first time like a couple weeks ago.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
know.
Well, we're making that a habit, I hope, because that's awesome.
Like, what? I've been
God
sleeping on
bless the
this.
public librry.
So
God.
wholesome.
That's a conversation for another day, but we love the library. Well, Chelsea, thank you so, so much for chatting with me today. Like, seriously, this has been such an honor. I'm so glad that this happened.
This is my favorite conversation I've had.
Oh,
Like, I feel like we're like, it might be too forward, but I feel like we're besties.
I think we are besties. Like, everything you've said today, I'm just like, wait, same. So, last thing before we finish up, but where are you in the world, on the internet? How can people work with you if they're interested? Where should they find out more about Healing Embodied and all the other things?
I'm floating in the ether in the interwebs. You can find me on Instagram at healing.embodied. You can find our website, healingembodied.com. We're on the TikToks, we're on the YouTubes, we are on the blogs.
Love it.
So lots of places. But yeah, healingembodied.com or at healing.embodied for TikTok and Instagram. And then type in Healing Embodied on YouTube.
Yay. And I'll put all the links in the show notes too, but just so we have them, verbally stated as well. But thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.